In 2024, I was banned from the South Australian Parliament. I'm going to tell you why, what's happened since, and that's today on the Dr. Joe Show. Before we get into today's show, can I just ask you please right now to just subscribe to the channel and also to spread the word and share it with other people too. Thanks, guys. So today I was going to give you an update on how things are going with challenging the ban in the South Australian Parliament. I guess we need to start with the backstory. Late last year in about September, I worked with a number of legal and medical experts, but particularly also MP Ben Hood, to introduce a bill into the South Australian Parliament that said after 28 weeks and up until birth, instead of killing the baby through the injection of poison and delivering them dead, we would simply deliver these children alive. So a mother could terminate her pregnancy in the third trimester, but she couldn't kill the baby deliberately. Now, there was a vicious campaign. There was a lot going on. It was pretty intense. The attacks were relentless that I was receiving. My workplace got inundated by activists trying to get me sacked. There was also media hit pieces, lots of things being said about me. And anyway, if you want to know more detail on why I got banned and what the drama was leading up to it, you can watch this video that's on my YouTube channel that I filmed shortly after the thing last year. But essentially what happened was the bill that I'd helped introduce lost by one vote. And once it lost, I thought that'd be, the end of the story for that particular chapter. It was devastating, brutally devastating. But I thought, okay, we're going to, be able to take a pause now and then move on. What I should have realized is the other side, like vultures, would kind of like try and come to my carcass and suck on my blood and pull me apart. And that is essentially what they did. So when the bill didn't pass, they started sniffing around for MPs to say that I'd bullied them or harassed them. And they tried that on Sarah Game, who was one of the two MPs I'd spoken to on the night of the vote. She refused to do that. In fact, she came on my own YouTube channel, and you can watch the video here, where she said, "You didn't bully me. I was glad you spoke to me," and that it was a good conversation. But they got to the second MP, Jing Lee. I'd spoken to her on the night as well. And they convinced her to make this extraordinary statement in the Parliament. Now, the thing was, Jing gets up on the Wednesday before I get banned, and she says that she was bullied and intimidated by this unnamed external visitor. So she doesn't even have the guts to name the person who allegedly bullied her. But she was clearly throwing me under the bus, and journos started ringing me straight away because they just assumed it was me. It was pretty clear that it was me, but she didn't name me, which I find really quite pathetic, actually. She then disappears from the scene, takes sick leave, doesn't answer any more questions, and then mysteriously turns back to work in a fortnight, And, there's no accountability or transparency over the very seriously defamatory things that she said. Because she said it in Parliament and you're covered by privilege, there was no recourse to me to be able to, take her to court and sue her for lying about me. Because the reality is, on that night of the vote, I'd spoken to Sarah Game, but I'd also spoken to Jing Lee, and I'd spoken to Jing Lee about how she was going to vote. And I persuaded her in that conversation to not pair her vote, but to actually vote for the live births bill, to vote for the babies. Anyway, in the speech she gives to Parliament, which obviously the pro-abortion side had tried to get her to do. So she's clearly the kind of person that perhaps does just listen to the last person she spoke to. But anyway, she gives that extraordinary statement in the Parliament about me bullying her. And I get invited to go on ABC radio the next day with David Bevan, and he interviews me. And the first thing he asks me is, did you pressure Jing Lee to vote for the bill? And I said very openly, yes, I did. I told her that you should vote for this bill. And if you don't vote for this bill, I'm going to tell the 120,000 people that follow me on social media and on my database, and I'm going to tell them what you did, and I'm going to tell them not to vote for you. Now, that is just politics. That's the conversation we had. It wasn't any more aggressive or less aggressive than that. It was just an assertive conversation about the fact that I've been very clear about where I stand on the bill and on the issue of abortion. I believe that babies in utero should have human rights and be protected by the law. I support this bill. If you don't vote for the bill, I'm going to hold you to account. I'm going to tell people what you did. And bear in mind, that's what the other side was doing constantly on that night. There was all of these conversations in corridors where I would literally walk out and see 4 pro-abortion MPs standing over somebody and essentially threatening them and telling them, if you don't do this, we're not going to support you. You won't get pre-selection. And so the conversation I had was far more civil than the conversations I saw going on that night by people on the Labor side to some of their own MPs. And yet it was me that was being accused of bullying and intimidation. I felt very comfortable with the conversation that we had. And when I went on to ABC Radio with David Bevan the next day, I was able to talk about the fact that not only had she agreed not to pair, but we then took a selfie together where we, put our arms around each other. And she actually texted me of her own volition to say, thank you for taking the initiative to speak to me on the night. So I had the receipts. I had a photo. I had a text message exchange. I never thought I'd need to use them. But given this extraordinary statement where she accuses me of bullying and intimidation, I was able to share that with David Bevan, and then Kat Birmingham in the Advertiser published those records. So I guess I thought at that point, okay, all of this fuss around me is surely going to die down now. But then this happens where Terry Stevens, who's a Liberal member of the upper house, but he's a bit like Judas, isn't he? He's for his 30 pieces of silver, he's kind of sold his soul. Labor has put him into that chair as president, and so that he could get all of those perks that you get. You get your own chauffeur, you get a salary bump, you get this place of prestige. You're the boss of the place. Terry Stevens, I guess, is kind of sold away his soul. He gave away his vote. He doesn't have a vote on the floor, and Labor needed to use him for that. And so he's basically Labor's puppet in the president's chair. Anyway, he then gets up after Jingley makes this extraordinary statement, after I then clear my name and show the evidence. Terry Stevens then says this.
Members have claimed to witness insults and threatening and intimidating tactics employed by Dr. Howe. I thank members who have provided their complaints and accounts of the behaviour they experienced or witnessed. Members must feel safe in carrying out their parliamentary duties.
So not once in this speech where he bans me from the parliament does he name anybody who makes any specific allegation against me. Not once was I actually asked to leave the parliament on that night. So some of the things he says in this speech is that I was intimidating and bullying people in corridors, that I was yelling in the parliament itself, and that this kind of behaviour is unacceptable in the parliament. And so that's why he's banning me. He doesn't give a limitation on the ban. It presumably lasts forever. And he also hasn't given me any due process in allowing me to respond to these allegations in advance. Now, as I've sort of played for you guys, you can watch back the other video, there's no evidence of me yelling. I did not yell. There was nothing I said or did that on the night led to me being ejected from the parliament. If I had been rowdy or difficult, the president at the time, Terry Stevens, he could have ejected me on the night of the bill, but I didn't do anything rowdy. So he didn't eject me at the time. He's now relying on the evidence of this cabal of pro-abortion MPs who really hate the fact that I've put them in the Baby Killers Club and that I've called them out and exposed what they've done in the fact that they support injecting babies in the third trimester with potassium chloride for no reason, in fact, other than they think a mother has a right to a dead baby and that the baby has no human rights protection. So people like Connie Benares, people like Emily Burke, Reggie Martin, these Russell Wortley, Ian Hunter, all of these pro-abortion MPs, I guess have given all of this to Terry Stevens and said she needs to be banned, her behaviour was unacceptable. And there's been no due process or substantive fairness accorded to me at all. And he just delivers this authoritarian ban. Now, there's very little recourse that we have, guys, as a member of the public when we're banned from the People's House. There's very little we can do. And I at the time, I called this out very strongly, and thousands, I think we've got over 25,000 on the petition. I'll put the link in the bio so you can sign it, guys, in the description. Because, I at the time challenged it very strongly on the basis that to ban a member of the public from the People's House does not bode well for democracy, especially when that ban is because a gang of people who disagree with that person's substantive position have essentially joined together to create that ban on totally fabricated grounds. And the only recourse I had was to write a response to Terry Stevens and to request that he read that response into the Parliament. So under the Standing Order 455A, so this is going to get a bit technical, but under the Rules of Parliament, the Standing Order 455A, you can, if your good name has been disparaged in the Parliament and it's been untrue, you can put your case on the record and request that it get read in. Now, President Terry Stevens has done this before. Other people, like Frank Pangallo, got in trouble by this other person because he'd said something about them. And, Terry Stevens had no problem reading that statement that person gave to him in response to Frank Pangallo under Standing Order 455A. But my response, which, we'll flick up on the screen for you guys, it's quite comprehensive. I go through in some detail about the allegations that were made against me and why they were wrong and why there's no evidence for them. It's actually been 4 months. So it was on the 8th of November that I gave this response to Terry Stevens. I don't get a response from him. 3 weeks later, I get this email saying, we are considering your response. We've received it. But then it's radio silence. 4 months. And this is a guy who's being paid more than $200,000 a year by us, the taxpayer. And he hasn't not only given me a proper response to say, yes, I'm going to read it into the parliament, as is your right, but he also hasn't read it into the parliament. And so, it just speaks to the total power that this guy has and the fact that he doesn't feel accountable. He doesn't feel like he needs to be transparent. He doesn't feel like he needs to be fair. He can just do whatever he wants to do because he's the president and, and the rest of us don't have any rights or say. So, it is hard. I'm going to be honest with you. It is hard. People from the other side are constantly sort of taunting me in comments on social media saying things like, oh, you must have done something really bad to get banned. How, obviously crazy you got banned. You can't have this conversation with every person you meet. No, I didn't bully someone. I didn't intimidate someone. And all you can do is just sleep well at night knowing that you didn't do those things. I knew going into this that this would be the approach of the other side. The book Alarmist Gatekeeping by Dr. Debbie Garrett, I talk about it quite a lot with you guys. That book really does trace how anybody that's spoken out against the abortion establishment, they have been bullied, harassed, intimidated, set up, cancelled by the other side. And I knew that would happen to me. But I guess I felt or I thought that in Parliament, like in the People's House, you just wouldn't be able to do this and get away with it. So that's kind of, I guess, been very eye-opening to know that you can. So I'm still waiting for a response from Terry Stevens. I'm not holding my breath for him to read this into the parliament, even though he should. I am also pursuing my legal options to see if there's anything I can do under constitutional law to challenge the ban. And I'm also just asking you guys to keep supporting this fight, keep putting the pressure on. So in the petition below, which is in the description, add your name and pass it around to friends, because ultimately I think we have to hold these people accountable for what they do. And the good thing is next year we will have a state election in South Australia and we'll be able to hold it to account not just Terry Stevens, but all of the MPs that voted to kill babies in the third trimester. And also Peter Malinauskas, the Premier, who, let's face it, nothing happens in the South Australian Parliament without his blessing. The pro-abortion cabal of Labor MPs who ganged up to get me banned with Terry Stevens as their puppet, that couldn't have happened without Peter Malinauskas saying, go for it. And, I hope that in next year's election, we're able to have some focus and scrutiny of him. He loves to be, Mr. Popular, cool guy, dancing at festivals, at sporting events. But ultimately, he has marketed himself as this Catholic guy who is a social conservative and a moderate. And yet when it came to this bill around abortion up to birth, he was Pontius Pilate. He washed his hands of it. In fact, he actively tried to, spread lies about it in the media. He made it sound like a radical bill, even though it actually just protected babies in the third trimester. And he himself had voted previously to stop babies being killed after 23 weeks. So, it really felt like he was playing politics. And with the ban, it feels like he just is essentially trying to shut down my voice and the voices of people that are assertive on the issue of abortion. For too long, the pro-life movement in Australia has been soft, has been cautious, has been afraid of making waves. And I think one of the reasons the other side got so confronted by me is because that's not me, that's not my style. If you really believe that abortion kills human beings, then we're doing this en masse. This is not just 1 or 2 babies killed. This is nearly 5,000 babies every year in South Australia alone being brutally killed. It's mass slaughter. In Australia-wide, it's close to 100,000 babies. So this is not the time to be softly spoken or to be nice. This is the time to speak up for these babies assertively and to expect our political leaders to do something about it. And so, they call that bullying intimidation. I just call that standing up for human rights. Thanks for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Dr. Joe Show.